Hugo Weaving, your working life seems to be spent moving between the big budget, big blockbusters, big everything, and small, somewhat humble Australian films that get great reviews and struggle at the box office. What's the contrast like for you? Because there must be such a contrast between working for months on a big film like The Wolfman, the big names, then coming back home to a tight little shoot with a small crew and a tiny budget like The Last Ride.
Well, it's wonderful in one way. I mean, it's like I get to experience a massive diversity of work, and I get to travel, and so all those things are beneficial. But there's another side to it. The things I put so much energy and love into, as you say, the small budget Australian films, they're often the ones that do disappear without a trace. And so there's a side to that which is constantly after I think, get yourself up to try and do the next one, and hope that maybe it transforms into people going to see it.
You're actually on record as saying that you don't particularly enjoy either working on the blockbusters or even seeing them. Right now, you'd have to say, with the exception of The Wolfman.
No, I can enjoy seeing them, but no, there's an element. I always enjoy working on set. I always enjoy the actual work. But the thing I don't enjoy so much about the big blockbuster films like Wolfman is that for instance took 4 months to shoot, and of course it means I'm sitting around, often away from home, away from my family. So that's the side of it that I find difficult. Is the sort of thumb twiddling that goes on, and you've got to think, okay, well I've got to entertain myself because I'm not working. I'm only working 2 days this week rather than every day, and so I think that's the side of the big budget film that I'm not enamoured with. That often there are so many people working on a big set. Things do take such a long time. Often communication breaks down in a way that it doesn't on a little set. On a small budget film, you get a stronger sense of family, probably better communication, and a sense that people are working together in a kind of more cohesive way. So I really love that, obviously.
Is part of it possibly that, and I'm not suggesting that the acting doesn't matter on the blockbusters, obviously it does, but that critical acclaim seems less important as long as it is spectacular and hits all the right formulaic marks.
Yeah.
And then scores at the box office. That seems to be the real measure.
Well, I mean, often the reason why I might choose to do something like this is I think it would be fun to do. And it's just a very simple, very, very simple thing. I thought, well, that'll be fun. There's some fantastic people in it, and it'll take me to this country, and maybe the family can come, and it'll be different. So the sort of pressure maybe I put on myself is not nearly as great, and maybe the reasons why I do something like that are quite different, to sort of just let off a bit of steam and enjoy it, and there's obviously something appealing about the script in the first place.
So what did you enjoy about your character in The Wolfman?
Well,
what was the challenge of that role for you?
Well, he's based on a real character. Inspector Frederick Abline actually ended up heading up the Ripper murders, unsuccessfully because they never caught the guy, of course. So I thought, oh, that's pretty interesting. If he's based on a real character, I started to do a little sort of bit of research, find out a little bit about him. Obviously, the man, as written in the script, has the same name, and they mentioned the Ripper murders, but he's a different character. But he's the voice of reason. He's a sceptical Scotland Yard detective. Of course, there's these hideous murders on them. The killer must be a human being. I'm not going to be believing in werewolves, and so I suppose he's the rational, experienced, reasonable, circumspect, sceptical, classical kind of detective.
Who loses his
and I thought, oh well, and there were a couple of fantastically enjoyable scenes. So it was kind of quite an easy decision, really.
So many of these blockbusters are made in Australia now and set records at the box office, but they're not Australian films. The real industry here is a constant struggle for some critical recognition and very little box office. Why do you think that is?
Look, it's such a complex issue, but one of the things we don't do very well is promote and sell our own films, and I think that there's so much money. Advertising does work, otherwise people wouldn't spend so much money on it. And we're probably not very good at promoting our own films.
But there have been times when Australian films have done very well in Australia, and that doesn't seem to be the case at the moment.
Yeah, because increasingly the measure of success is box office, and if a film doesn't do well at the box office, the commentary is that it's therefore it is a poor film and it's not successful. I would always argue, well, not always, but hopefully you'd want to marry the two. You'd want something to be kind of critically acclaimed and a box office success. But as you yourself have said, it's often not the way. You get critical success but box office failure. And you do need to spend a lot of time promoting films, and the Americans do it so well, which is why we watch American films over here, but we don't really do it very well at all, I don't think.
It's a paradox, isn't it, here? Because while the industry here struggles, Australia seems to have produced more individual success stories than ever before. The list of Australian actors in demand globally it just seems to be getting bigger by the minute.
Yeah, and directors and DPs.
Yes.
Yeah.
And cinematographers have always had a high standing overseas. The playwright, Louis Nara, painted a pretty grim picture of the Australian industry in a long article in the Monthly magazine late last year after seeing most of the films released last year. And he remarked on their monotonous bleakness, as he called it. Does he have a point? That we're not mixing them up much?
No, I think he's completely wrong. Last year, there was actually, I don't think they were monotonous or bleak. I think you get a film like Australia, compare that to Mary and Max, compare that to Samson's Delight or Last Ride.
Well, he thought Last Ride.
Well, he would have thought that was bleak and monotonous. But you see, I think a lot of the commentators get very prescriptive and say, well, therefore all the films last year were bleak. I don't think they were, and you can't say, well, we're not allowed to make this sort of film because it's difficult. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, people were saying, why are we making all these stupid, quirky... Do you remember that? They were saying,
yeah.
All these quirky comedies, why don't we make something different?
Well, I was going to
now
ask
the
you...
refrain is, why are we making these depressive stories about drug addicts?
Well, I was going to ask you as the next question, have Australian filmmakers lost the capacity to make the quirky and entertaining films like Mad Max, going back, or Muriel's Wedding, or Priscilla?
Well, Mad Max is about to be remade, I think, quite soon. There'll be another version of that. But Mary and Max was a kind of, delightful film in many ways. And I don't think... Look, there are some difficult films that were made last year, difficult subjects, but by no means were all the films made like that. I actually think last year I think it was a fantastic sort of spread of varied filmmaking.
But do you really think the failure at the box office is just about marketing?
No, but it would be different with each film.
Right. Okay.
I mean, I don't see why a complex, psychological, difficult piece should necessarily be not made. I think that's an appalling thing to say.
Yeah.
But I would always argue that you want a variety of filmmakers working and a variety of stories being told. You don't want just one type of film.
No.
And the slate was so varied last year that I think that was actually its strength. So I think to say that they were all hideously depressing, I'm fine with someone not liking a film because it's depressing, or they feel it's depressing. That's fine. But
not the generalisation.
No.
Okay.
No.